Revolutionary governments must pass the coffee test. Intro. Let me give you a rule for revolutions. A rule that's so simple it almost sounds silly, but it explains why so many revolutions fail. Revolutionary governments must pass the coffee test. And the coffee test is basic. It's not about ideology. It's not about flags. It's not about speeches. It's about this. Can people wake up and have a coffee and feel like life is normal? Because if they can't, if the electricity is cutting out, if shops are empty, if food prices are exploding, if the currency is collapsing, then your revolution might be morally inspiring. But it's politically dead. And this is the argument I want to make today. Moral lectures don't keep the lights on. Governance does. Because you can't run a country if people can't wake up and have a coffee. Now I want to prove that with one example. Egypt. Part 1. A country is like a coffee machine. The West loves talking about democracy. People vote. A government wins. Freedom arrives. But countries are not run on freedom. Countries are run on systems. A modern state is basically a giant coffee machine. Electricity, water, fuel, food supply, transport, policing, courts, hospitals, wages and pensions, and currency stability. And revolutions don't inherit a clean coffee machine. They inherit a machine designed to serve the previous regime. So the day after the revolution, the real question isn't, who has the best moral vision? It's, who can operate the machine tomorrow morning? Because legitimacy isn't an abstract concept. Legitimacy is the quiet confidence people have when they wake up and think. Right, coffee. Normal day. If your revolution can't deliver that feeling, it's finished. Part 2. What the coffee test really means. Now when I say coffee, I'm not only talking about coffee. Coffee is just a symbol. Because coffee represents electricity that works, imports arriving, supply chains functioning, streets being safe, currency not collapsing, people having enough confidence in tomorrow. In modern life, coffee is normality. So the coffee test is really asking, can the revolutionary government deliver? Continuity, stability, predictability. Not forever, not perfectly, but enough for the public to believe the country is still functioning and delivering coffee. Because the public can tolerate hardship, but they won't tolerate directionless collapse. If the revolution feels like a future, people accept pain. If the revolution feels like chaos, people beg for order. And when coffee disappears, calm disappears. Part 3. Egypt, a revolution that failed the coffee test. This is why Egypt matters. Egypt wasn't a small uprising. Egypt wasn't a footnote. Egypt was the center of gravity in the Arab Spring. And when Egypt's government fell, the whole region watched, coffee in hand. Because Egypt wasn't just Egypt. It was a test coffee case, a proof that a regime could fall and elections could happen. Then the Muslim Brotherhood won. Now, I'm not doing simplistic moral analysis here. I'm not saying they were good or they were evil. I'm saying something more basic. They weren't ready to run the coffee machine. Opposition movements are built to protest,
Mobilise.
resist. Governments are built to administer, stabilize, manage crisis, negotiate with entrenched power, and keep coffee running. It's a totally different skill set. Winning an election doesn't mean you can run a country. It means you now own the problems. And Egypt's problems were brutal. Inflation, currency pressure, institutional sabotage, a hostile deep state, a military that never wanted to give up power. So here's the blunt truth. The Muslim Brotherhood couldn't keep the coffee flowing. They couldn't keep daily life stable enough for people to relax. And once normal life collapses, everything turns political. Coffee becomes political. Bread becomes political. Fuel becomes political. Electricity becomes political. At that point, it doesn't matter how noble your values are, because the public isn't thinking, shall we discuss the democratic transition? They're thinking, why can't I live? And then the oldest instinct kicks in. People choose coffee over ideals, even if stability comes in uniform, even if stability comes with repression, because at least normal life returns. At least people can wake up and have a coffee. Part 4. The West's failure. Moral commentary instead of practical support. Now let's talk about the West. The West looked at Egypt and treated it like a morality play. It offered moral language, rights, inclusion, democratic values, expressions of concern. But it didn't offer enough of what new governments actually need. Practical governance capacity. How to stabilize, how to plan, how to negotiate, how to keep the machine functioning while legitimacy is still fragile. Which brings me back to the core line. Moral lectures don't keep the lights on. Governance does. If the West truly cared about democracy surviving, it would care about whether the new government could pass the coffee test. Because if a government can't keep energy stable, food affordable, wages paid, streets calm, then democracy becomes associated with chaos. And once democracy becomes associated with chaos, people stop defending it. And once Egypt failed, other regimes learned something. Opposition movements learned something too. They didn't learn, democracy wins. They learned. Even if you win elections, you might not be allowed to govern. So yes, I think success in Egypt might have encouraged change elsewhere. But failure spreads easier and faster. Failure teaches fear. Failure teaches obedience. Part 5. Now apply the coffee test to Iran, Russia, China. Now scale the logic up. Iran, Russia, China. If these states collapse, you're not just risking one government. You're risking civilization-scale machines. Iran. If Iran collapses, it's not just about elections. It's who controls security, who controls oil infrastructure, who prevents fragmentation. Russia. If Russia collapses, it's not democracy arriving. It's who controls the nukes. At that point, the coffee test becomes the nuclear test. China. And China is the biggest coffee test of all. Because if China collapses, you don't just lose a government. You lose a continental logistics machine. If China fractures, coffee doesn't just disappear in China. It disappears everywhere. So when Western politicians casually talk about collapse, regime change, governments falling, I sometimes think they don't understand what they're implying. Because collapse doesn't automatically mean free coffee and freedom. Collapse often means the machine breaks, and normal life collapses. Conclusion, the final coffee line. So here's the conclusion. Revolutions don't fail because people don't want freedom. They fail because modern life is a machine. And if you don't know how to run the machine, it breaks. That's why I call it the coffee test. Because coffee is universal. Coffee is stability. Coffee is daily life. And once coffee stops flowing, calm stops flowing, legitimacy stops flowing, the revolution stops flowing. So yes, moral lectures don't keep the lights on. Governance does. And you can't run a country if people can't wake up and have a coffee. And everything feels better with coffee.